In the dead of night, as most people slept, former President Donald Trump was awake, stewing in frustration and rage. His target? Republican Representative Barry Loudermilk, who had just released a so-called interim report on the January 6th Capitol insurrection. But why did this report, which seemed to have little new to offer, send Trump into a full-blown meltdown at 2:30 a.m. on Wednesday? Was this just another one of Trump's trademark temper tantrums, or was there something more at play here? As Trump's Truth Social account lit up with a series of posts accusing former Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney of potential criminal activity, it became clear that the former president was intent on creating a new narrative, one where he would be completely absolved of any responsibility for the violent events that transpired on that fateful day in January 2021. Loudermilk's report, which exonerated Trump while blaming everyone else, from Democratic leadership to the FBI, was the catalyst for this outburst. But what did this report really say, and why was it so important to Trump? More importantly, what does this tell us about the ongoing fight over accountability for January 6th, and the lengths to which Trump and his allies are willing to go to rewrite history? The loopholes in Loudermilk's report. The so-called interim report released by Barry Loudermilk was far from the earth-shattering revelation that some right-wing media outlets made it out to be. Instead, it was a thinly veiled attempt to deflect responsibility for the January 6th Capitol riot away from Donald Trump and onto a wide variety of scapegoats. Loudermilk's findings were startlingly similar to the conspiracy-laden narratives that have circulated on conservative media for years. The report named a range of supposed culprits for the violence on that day, including Democratic leadership, Capitol police officers, members of the intelligence community, and, unsurprisingly, the FBI. Notably absent from Loudermilk's list of blameworthy individuals was Donald Trump. Despite overwhelming evidence linking Trump's rhetoric and actions to the events of January 6th, the report failed to mention any responsibility on his part. Instead, it placed the blame on everyone else, essentially suggesting that Trump was merely a bystander, caught up in a larger conspiracy orchestrated by his political enemies. This was a deeply troubling attempt to rewrite history and absolve the former president of any culpability in what was, without question, one of the darkest moments in modern American history. Loudermilk's report, however, didn't stop there. It also took aim at Liz Cheney, the Republican representative from Wyoming who had been one of the most vocal critics of Trump's role in the insurrection. In an apparent effort to discredit Cheney and delegitimize her efforts as vice chair of the January 6th Select Committee, Loudermilk suggested that she should be prosecuted for how she treated witnesses during the investigation. There were no facts or evidence to back up this claim, but it was a convenient attack on one of the few Republicans who had dared to stand up to Trump. The report, which was released without any new substantial evidence, seemed to be nothing more than a political stunt. Loudermilk provided no groundbreaking revelations, no documents to back up his claims, and no legal analysis to support his conclusions. In essence, the report was a futile attempt to discredit the findings of the January 6th committee and paint Trump as the victim of a political witch hunt. And for many, it was clear that Loudermilk was more interested in scoring political points than uncovering the truth about the insurrection. Trump's midnight outburst. When the report dropped on Tuesday afternoon, it quickly gained traction in right-wing media circles. Conservative commentators and Trump's allies began pushing the narrative that Loudermilk's report was proof of a grand conspiracy to silence Trump and cover up the truth about January 6th. The report's findings were presented as though they were groundbreaking, when in fact, they were little more than a rehash of familiar talking points and baseless claims. But what happened next was the real spectacle. At 2:30 a.m. on Wednesday morning, Trump took to his social media platform, Truth Social, to launch into a tirade. His post was filled with all the anger and frustration that one would expect from a person facing intense legal and political pressure. Trump thanked Loudermilk for his job well done and praised the report's findings, even though it lacked any actual evidence or credibility. What followed was a deeply troubling attack on Liz Cheney. Trump accused her of breaking federal laws in her treatment of witnesses during the January 6th investigation, suggesting that the FBI should launch an investigation into her actions. This was a baseless claim, with no facts or legal grounds to support it, but that didn't stop Trump from amplifying it to his millions of followers. In typical Trump fashion, he turned the spotlight away from his own behavior and instead focused on attacking his enemies, particularly Cheney, who had become one of his most vocal and formidable critics. Trump's midnight outburst also revealed something deeper about his mindset, his obsession with controlling the narrative. For Trump, the truth is often irrelevant. What matters is creating a story that fits his political agenda. The idea that Loudermilk's report, which had no real substance, could be framed as a victory for Trump highlights just how far he's willing to go to avoid facing the consequences of his actions. In the process, he continues to spread misinformation, discredit those who oppose him, and try to erase the truth about January 6th. The role of conservative media. As expected, Trump's allies in conservative media jumped on the bandwagon, amplifying the claims made in Loudermilk's report as though they were undeniable facts. Newsmax and other right-wing outlets latched onto the idea that the report contained crucial new evidence, despite the lack of any actual proof. Right-wing pundits, including Trump's daughter-in-law Laura Trump, pushed the narrative that Cheney was in trouble, despite the absence of any legitimate legal case against her. This is part of a larger pattern in which conservative media outlets act as echo chambers for Trump's falsehoods and political agendas. These platforms have long been complicit in enabling Trump's attempts to rewrite history, casting doubt on investigations into the January 6th attack and promoting baseless claims about election fraud. In this case, they helped amplify a report that had no factual basis, hoping to rally Trump supporters around a narrative that absolves him of any wrongdoing and shifts blame onto his political enemies. Cheney as a scapegoat. The focus on Liz Cheney is not surprising. Cheney has been one of the few Republicans willing to publicly criticize Trump for his role in the January 6th insurrection. As vice chair of the January 6th Select Committee, Cheney played a pivotal role in investigating the attack and presenting evidence that directly connected Trump to the events of that day. For Trump and his allies, Cheney's defiance has made her a prime target. By pushing for Cheney's prosecution and attempting to discredit her actions during the investigation, Trump and his supporters are trying to silence one of the most prominent voices within the Republican Party who has challenged him. The right-wing narrative that Cheney was somehow a criminal for her role in the investigation is a desperate attempt to shift the focus away from Trump's behavior and onto his critics. Trump's midnight meltdown over Loudermilk's report was more than just a tantrum. It was a reflection of his ongoing effort to rewrite the story of January 6th and avoid any responsibility for the violent insurrection that took place under his watch. Loudermilk's report, which contained no new evidence or legal substance, was little more than a political document aimed at protecting Trump from the fallout of his own actions. Despite the best efforts of Trump and his allies to deflect blame and smear his critics, the truth about January 6th remains clear. Trump's role in inciting the violence, spreading misinformation, and attempting to overturn the election results cannot be erased. The investigations into January 6th will continue, and Trump's attempts to control the narrative through lies and manipulation will ultimately fail. The real question now is whether the Republican Party will continue to allow Trump to shape the party's future or whether they will finally confront the reality of his actions. For the rest of the country, the fight for accountability and justice continues. The damage done by January 6th cannot be undone, but those responsible must be held to account, no matter how hard they try to rewrite history. Trump may throw tantrums, spread lies, and try to distract from the truth, but the truth will always prevail in the end. As we move forward, it is crucial to continue demanding accountability and standing firm in the face of political manipulation. The lessons of January 6th must not be forgotten, and we must remain vigilant to ensure that those responsible are held to the highest standard of justice. Trump's midnight meltdown may have been a fleeting moment of rage, But the fight for the truth is far from over.